Black woman writer, it would be hard to understate the importance of Zora Neale Hurston. So I Love Myself When I'm Laughing is definitely a book that comes to mind. I think both for Hurston's amazing writing, the insight and the wit, and the audaciousness too of her work, that I think definitely, I remember reading some of her work when I was in high school and college, and having it sort of plant seeds that sprouted later of recognizing that I could be a writer who was irreverent, who maybe wasn't always everybody's cup of tea, but who thought radically and thought big and was bold. So both for the work, but then also I think that the origin story of it, of that reclamation by Alice Walker of Zora Neale Hurston's work, also really inspires me, because I think for people who live on the margins to be able to say that we have stories, we have histories, that we are our own saviors, is also what that book makes me think about when I think about that larger story as well.
We're our own saviors. Yes, I was thinking about just how some advice that one of my friends and a poet, I love Diamond Sharp, had said about how we're going to need to learn to govern ourselves in 2016. And so those words you said just really got into my soul in terms of how real they are and what we're living through right now. So Michelle, how about you?
I mean, I feel like all you guys do is publish like the textbooks for my ongoing feminist education, right? Because it never stops. Like you just have to keep soaking in like new information. You guys did Therese and Isabel. It's like Violette Ledoux is one of the most important like memoirist writers to me. She was a queer French writer, and she was so unhappy. And she part of her book La Bâtarde was excerpted as this little like schoolgirl romance called Therese and Isabel, and it's so dramatic and wonderful. And you guys did that. Witches, Midwives, and Nurses by Barbara Ehrenreich. I believe you guys did that right at the very beginning in the 70s. Such a crucial book about healthcare and magic, and the way that what has been traditionally women's work in the health and body fields what happened to it, and how patriarchy kind of came in and made the witches go away. The Crunk Feminist collection is so crucial. The Spread collection, the Riot Girl collection, and honestly, the Jenna Leo book, Rape New York, was such an intense education about class and real estate and gentrification in our urban centers. It's such an extreme story, but also so like frighteningly ordinary. I mean, I could just go on. There's others here. Thank you for all these books. They're so important.
Fun fact I just have to share is we've seen an upsurge of witches, midwives, and nurses in the past few years. There's a certain movement that has been resurged around the resistance and witches, and that has been really exciting to us, just to see the excitement around that book, and it's a really strong backlist title for us. So thanks so much for bringing that into the room. I feel like we've been benefiting from that magic very recently. So Juli, how about you?
Hi. Well, I want to echo what Michelle said. I went looking through the website and I was in awe of like the titles that you guys have. Like, I didn't know that some of the stuff you had published it. Like, for instance, Testo Junkie. I didn't know that the Feminist Press was the one that published the translation of it by Paul Preciado, which is like incredible. And I love that book. And I was like, what? I didn't know you guys had done that. I have to say, when I was thinking about this, I thought about The Cosmopolitans by Sarah Schulman, which is set in the 50s in New York. And I love historical fiction. Like, I'm a sucker for historical fiction. And I love anything that teaches me about history. And it was basically that. It was like this opening us to how to do history in fiction. For me, it was like craft-wise, it's like, how do you bring in all that research and all that stuff to actually fit into a narrative and to actually tell a story? Because at the end, it's about the storytelling. And I think you know, Sarah's great in storytelling. It was just like such a like beautiful masterpiece in storytelling. It was also just, you know, the complicated history of like racial politics at the time in New York and gayness, and, you know, but it was about this like biracial friendship. And I love books that are about friendship also, because, you know, usually it's like about love, which is also nice, but I really like stuff around friendship. And it was like such an unusual approach. And it was like so layered. I really learned a lot about how to bring in a ton of research into like making the storytelling feel really live. I was also just gonna name Tango by Justin Vivian Bond, which I really loved. The memoir I really love. I love Black Wave by Michelle also. I learned a lot about how to use memory from her book. And I was thinking about Origin and Plumbing as well, which came out recently, I believe it was maybe last year. That, you know, I also like, I had been buying those zines in San Francisco for like so many years. So I have like all the zines, and I was like, oh my God, now there's a book of all of them together. It just feels incredible. So it, you know, it's like, it's this, again, I feel like it is this beautiful thing of everything that I want to see in the world. I just, you guys kind of do it in all those beautiful ways, you know. And so like there's as much care for who is being portrayed as to the craft. Like I think that there's a lot of care about the literary quality and the craft of the book, as well as like what is the book trying to do in the world. And I appreciate both.
Oh, I love it. And it's so great to hear about the books that you enjoy, because now I'm seeing new elements of reading and having read your books and knowing about your writing. And now it's like hearing a musician's influences. And I live with a jazz musician, so when they quote different things or, you know, that kind of thing, I was just thinking, oh, you like books about friendship. Okay, I see that. And I love it. So Bishakh, would love to hear from you.
So, well, I wanted to give a shout out to Michelle and to Against Memoir, which I reread fairly recently. And one thing, I mean, I found it on first reading it, you know, I certainly loved it, but on the second reading, I was thinking how much of it resonated with me specifically. And I was thinking, you know, just on a sort of anecdotal level of when you were talking, Michelle, about like lip syncing to Susie and the Banshees like, at one point, right? And I was like, that's me, you know, it's like, you're like totally mirroring my experience, even though we're like, I don't know. I mean, we come from different backgrounds and from different histories and different roots, but, you know, I felt like in a way that moment of like subcultural awareness for me was an opening up into gender and into being femme and to, I guess, feminism, you know, and I think like that shared experience of music and subculture is something that was really ripe with meaning for me at the time and kind of ripened even more the older I got. And it wasn't just a case of it being like a fad or something. It really was a portal for me to reckon with things that I think are, you know, bigger than subculture. So I just wanted to say that really that really resonated with me. Also, the sorry, the essay, the Camp Trans essay, you know, gave me a real insight into a space that I never thought. This is, you know, I'm talking about before I came out as trans. Like, I never thought I would have access to such a space, and to read about what that space was like, you know, was, I think spoke to both the like precariousness and the simultaneous power of a trans existence, you know? And it also felt like, and I think this is the case with another book that I'll mention later, it sort of felt like a kind of a utopia that was apart from society and apart from a sense of homogeneity. And to have that insight into that space was really, for me, like eye-opening and wonderful. It's, you know, I'd always heard about Camp Trans, but I'd never got to be a part of it. So just to have that eyewitness account of it was really special. And I think I think reading your book, Michelle, is like, and being part of the Feminist Press family opens up for me a lot of questions and affirms a lot of my, it turns on its head the kind of hesitancy I felt like around coming out as trans, and also what my relation to feminism was, you know? So yeah, against memoir.
Thank you.
I wanted to just say so beautiful. And I wanted to thank Michelle for Against Memoir as well, because you forever changed the way that I, as someone who has a documented pigeon phobia, sees pigeons. And so I'm working on interrogating it.
Part of my work in the world, so thank you.
Yes, it's really important. I'm now regard them with so much more gentleness and compassion. And I think the way you handled that metaphor is so brilliant for anyone who hasn't read Against Memoir yet. If you have pigeon issues, you need to check issues on class and internalized depression. And I highly recommend you read this book. So the next thing that I wanted to ask is, do you feel a connection to the history of the press? Are there any books on the 50-year strong list that you feel that your own book or books are in conversation with in the overall list? And does anyone want to speak to that?
I feel like it's, for me, it's been so affirming to be part of Feminist Press, because I feel like I I always, like, I want family, right? And I want what is the, like, a lineage, right? I want to be part of a lineage. And I fear that I have not these things because of the various ways I'm weird or messy or contradictory or whatever. And, to be brought into Feminist Press and be so welcomed, and then being encouraged, as a series editor, as I was for a while, to bring in more people, to be trusted with that sort of vision, it just makes me feel like, oh wow, like I am a part of a feminist legacy that stretches back through, times and eras that I probably don't fully understand, and with people who worked out conflicts, and had to get past things to make this thing happen that I'll never know about. And it's just a very warm and grounding feeling. I had a witch tell me once that I have no ancestors around me, which was like so disturbing. But now I'm just like, oh, it's fine. I'm on Feminist Press. I have this like backlist of literary ancestors that I get to be a part of. And I feel like all those books I was mentioning, I feel so influenced. Like I feel like, when you're a writer, everything that you take in becomes part of your DNA in this way. It's like your reference banks. So I can be writing and not thinking of like testo junkie, but then a reference, like something will, and then it's there somehow. And it's like that you've created this intense bank of reference points that are now like in my body and that I use. So in some level, I'm always in conversation with what I've read and been influenced by. What really jumped out at me with that question though was Virgie Despentes' Apocalypse Baby, and Christy C. Rhodes' Spit and Passion. Like Virginie, it's somebody who's just creating a wild narrative, which I was allowed to do with you guys with Black Wave. That was this book that I had hidden in a drawer because I literally thought nobody would ever want to publish it because it was so weird. And then I did have a press agree to publish it, and then they actually read it and they were like, "Ooh, we didn't read it. We can't do this." And so I had really given up on it, and then you guys took it and gave it a life, and I'm so grateful. And with Spit and Passion, Christy wrote, I so relate and love being in conversation with her as a femme queer punk, who has a history of zines and life on the road. And I just feel like I've traveled with Christy. I love Christy. And I mean, everybody on this panel and like all of the folks like Brontez Purnell and like, Ariel Gore, like so many amazing peers, that I get to be published among and be part of this So I get the lineage in the back, and then I get the peers in the front, and it's like I'm happy here forever.
Oh, I love it. And I'm thinking about Layla Saad, who's an author and a friend, has this concept of what it means to be a good ancestor while we're here. And so I want to say that we got to tell that witch that you are a good ancestor. And also I have been told by witches that I carry a lot of ancestors around me that are really noisy. So you can have some of mine if you want to have some. So does anyone else want to speak to the history of the press and the books that you feel that your books are in conversation with? I'm so fascinated by this question because throughout my time at Feminist Press, every time we would take on a new book, I would often think about, oh, who is this author in conversation with? What discourse on the list are they debating with, engaging with, riffing with, remixing? And so I'm really also curious just to know, hey, was it what I thought and what we thought in terms of our team conversations, or is it something entirely different, which I also think would be amazing to hear?
I mean, I was also thinking about Chris's Speed and Passion. I've been recovering from surgery, so I've been reading a lot, and I was like rereading her book. It's like right here. And I think that for my book came out this year, and nobody wanted that manuscript. Like I tried shopping that around, and everybody was like, no, the Spanish, no, the thing. And it was just like, I felt like I wasn't being taken seriously because of the play in language in the book. And I feel that that just echoes my own weirdness in the world and the way that I exist, and the fact that I am constantly, both my work and myself, like I constantly have to push to make spaces for myself and like go and find my people because they're not just there. And that feels the same way with the work. And I've had such a beautiful experience working with Feminist Press over the past like 3 years, whatever it's been. It's just the fact that the press trusted and like went with a manuscript that was just like no by everybody. And now it's just been like this like beautiful gift to me, and like a lot of beautiful things are happening. I'm just like in awe, and I feel a really deep sense of connection with the other people that are in the list. And Michelle was talking about Brontes, and there's a Valerie Solanas book there, and then again Justin Vivian Bond. And I just feel like this bond with especially a lot of like queer people who are both themselves in their own lives pushing for like a lot of weirdness, and that mimics kind of like their work. I feel very much in relation to that. Like I do feel that there's this way that we are this family. Because when you're a weirdo, you feel that in such a like intimate way, and in such an intimate way. So like when you go and you present your work to someone and they're seeing it in a different light, you can feel that you already know that. So I was thinking about Christie's, and I was thinking about again the Cosmopolitans, and I was thinking about the historical stuff in the Cosmopolitans, and I was thinking about voice in Michelle's book in Black Wave. Because I am so committed to voice, and because it's something that just like I appreciate and love a lot. And so I thought about Michelle's book, and then in Justin Vivian's Bond, the tango one, I thought about the childhood and the writing of childhood, which I wrote about a teenager, but it's like that kind of like world building of what that means for like a younger person. And yet through like a queer lens, right? Like my character is not necessarily queer from the beginning, but it's like there's all this way that there's a queer lens. And so like Michelle said, like there's a thing that maybe you don't know consciously, but it seeps through once you're writing. And the more you're exposed to people who like are to writing that really resonates with you in all the ways, that's why it's so important to have like people like us to be able to publish, because it comes in, it really seeps through your writing. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's been a gift to have this. It's been a year of shit. And yet I have this beautiful book, and I've been able to connect with so many people over it and have this panel and like do some things because the press took a huge chance on a book that people were turning down. And I, again, have Michelle to thank for that, because she took my manuscript and went with it. And I was like, just have it. I don't know what else to do with this thing.
The greatest book ever. And then it goes on to get this amazing like New York Times review, right? Presses are just scared and you guys aren't. So
It's really
yeah, and so
exciting.
it resonates. Yeah, it resonates. Like it really resonates to be able to publish risky things, and whatever risky means, right? To like a mainstream. Sometimes is who is getting represented. Sometimes is the language. Sometimes is the narrative itself. And for me, it had a lot to do with the language and what I was trying to do. And you all took a huge risk. And I remember even having a conversation with my editor, with Lauren, about the title, because I was like, it's in Spanish. And she's like, it's fine. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I wanted to change it to English. She's like, no, it's okay. And I was like, wow, you guys are just like amazing. I can't even believe you go with the title in Spanish. So, you know, it's like things like that that make a huge difference to me. You know, like if you're willing to stand by a book that has a title in Spanish and try to sell that, I'm like, that's awesome.
I love it. And I want you to know, just knowing a little bit more about their origin story now and hearing it, that this was a book that as soon as it was making its rounds, NFP, everyone was loving it. So I also just want to say that, you know, context is everything, right? And so to hear this, I just want you to know when it came into our orbit, we were levitating. And, you know, even, I mean, for me, I kept saying, oh, I wish that I knew Spanish because I am already loving this. And so I feel like the people who also read in Spanish on the team are getting an even deeper experience. And it made me think, oh, I need to go study some Spanish so that I can make sure that I have the even deeper Fiebre Tropical experience. And yet I had this amazing experience also as a reader who is learning the sounds and the reading of Spanish. And I think that's really important. So I want to thank you for giving us a book that I felt is a really important book, but also for you to know that it was immediately beloved when it came into the Feminist Press house. And I think it's important to hear that, especially now knowing more that you had some other people who didn't get it yet before it came through our doors. So just know that we were all just beyond excited and have been really proud to see your ascension. So
thank you for that, Jamie. It means a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you for the gift. And also just fun fact for everyone to know, because I love to nerd out on this, but Juli had a really awesome idea about their cover. And so you see not only in the writing, but in the art, Juli's artistry and mastery as well. So I just wanted to call that out.
I care about how things look.
Yes, bright and bold color.
Bitch. Yes.
I think I remember that, and us just saying, oh yeah, like when we heard what you were thinking, we were just like, this works, right? And so I wanted to share that too. I think that's a special part of FP, that our authors really are engaged in a lot of the conversation about their stories, and but also the presentation of their narratives. And I think that's really important. So Camille and Bishakh, do you have anything that you would want to say about your connection to literary foreparents at Feminist Press, or also just the history?
Yeah, so actually sort of going off what Juli just said about their book, I think one of the things that I really connect with about Feminist Press is there's no arguing about the value of something. There's not like, let me prove to you that these stories are worthwhile. They just are. And I think that is, I mean, to be an author is an incredible gift, because that certainly is not the experience, you know, everywhere, especially if you're a marginalized person. And I mean, so 3 of the books that I'm thinking about that I think my work is in conversation with, I think also to me demonstrate like how amazing the press is. So Daddy Was a Number Runner, Louise Merriweather, Paul Marshall's Brown Girl, Brown Stone, and Dorothy West, The Living is Easy, which I'm so happy to see the new edition of. But even in those 3 books, you know, obviously they're different, but there's an exploration of Black identity across those books that goes into class and immigration and colorism. And, you know, I think when I think about my own work, of thinking of those, you know, intercultural issues, as well as like, you know, how then the reaction is interculturally, is really, you know, really important for me. And so I definitely see resonances between some of the things I was trying to do in training school with those voices.
Yes, and that's so beautiful. And I wanted to just share that Louise Merriweather, who you mentioned with Daddy, was a number winner. It's a beloved author of ours. And we have a Louise Merriweather Prize that is named after Louise and her trailblazing work. And I just wanted to share that she is recovering from COVID-19 and could use our help. And there's a GoFundMe in support of her that I would urge anyone who has anything to give, you know, whatever amount is meaningful. I'm also contributed, just wanted to, because you shouted her out, I was just thinking it'd be a great opportunity for our community to show up for her and to help her in her healing at 98 years old, warrioring through COVID-19 recovery. So thanks so much for calling her into this space with us too.
Absolutely.
And for also giving me the honor of having your book be the first book I ever edited at Feminist Press, which was an honor and a pleasure and will remain so.
Honor for me too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bishakh.
So I was going to say, I felt like some of my work has a sort of contemporary but oblique conversation with the original plumbing collection. I think in the sense that it's, and I think I alluded to this a little bit before, but in the sense of that book representing, and zines in general, representing a kind of creation of culture, you know, a sort of like creation of something where something didn't exist before. And it's a very, like, obviously, you know, it's a very queer strategy. And you know, original OP takes a certain approach to it, as, you know, as zine culture does in general. But I felt like there was, again, a sort of utopian tendency that I really appreciated, that I think in my work was only starting to bubble up to the surface, especially, you know, in some of the work that attempts to imagine what like a queer trans future can look like, you know. And I think that book in some ways is already doing that kind of project. So I wanted to give a shout out to OP, but I also wanted to echo what Michelle and Juli were saying about legacy and family. And I felt like a book like OP was like on, you know, as it is a part of the Feminist Press roster, represents a kind of openness to the idea of family, you know, and what family means and what legacy means. And what it means to me is that someone like me can be part of this legacy, and also part of a family that is really diverse and open, and you know, like, under the banner of feminism. It makes me really hopeful and optimistic about the power of openness and imagination.
Beautiful. Yes. A power of openness and imagination. And that leads me to the last question I have before we get to questions from our wonderful attendees, which aligns with that idea about the future. When you're talking about trans futures, it made me think, what is the future of feminist publishing? And some of what you've already said is very much to me what I think is the future of feminist publishing, and you are too, the part of that future. But I would love to hear what your opinions are about the future of feminist publishing.
I mean, I really think it's just what Feminist Press is doing right now, you know, is really being at the vanguard of intersectional feminist publishing that is completely inclusive and risk-taking as far as like what content is, you know, and seeing that how important it is to publish like the weird stories or the strange structured, the experimental work, these things that, if you want to look at things in terms of like feminism and patriarchy, it's like they don't fit into the white, straight, male, hetero, corporate publishing world. It's like where all these like little like freaky weird writers are coming through the cracks and, letting our stories have this larger cultural space. It allows the work to actually erode that sort of patriarchal publishing sphere that is afraid to take chances and that wants to just keep putting forth these same tired ass middle class, white people stories. Like, we don't need those anymore. And so it's just, I feel like the future of feminist publishing would be other publishers emulating what you guys are doing. So, which would be cool, because we need more feminist presses, right? Because there's so many great writers telling really singular stories whose work needs homes.
You're making me think a bit of Carly Moore, who is a feminist press author and is working on a series, Panpocalypse now, that is a series on our website, multimedia, but also is being done via dictation, as well as an accommodation, but also as a part of their expression. And then that book will then be a print book. And so when I think about voices, and when I think about feminist press and Carly's particular intervention, what you said just really resonated with me around, the fact that Carly came to us with this idea saying, right now in the pandemic, the thing that I'm realizing in terms of my own abilities and what I'm managing right now in the midst of the pandemic is that dictation is really the mode that I need to be dealing in. And what would you think of something that would be multi-platform, that would be online with graphics and then maybe a book? And we were just saying, oh, that sounds amazing, right? But we had that same conversation too, where she thought, oh, I was really surprised that you were right on board with that, but I thought, us, you know how we roll. So I'm really glad to hear that, because I think that is what's so special about feminist press. And what drew me to feminist press the first day, my mother handed me a copy of a feminist press book in Greenville, North Carolina, where I felt like such a weirdo, and still do when I'm back often. And yet to say, that I have this book, and so I know I'm a part of this bigger thing. And yes, maybe the people who live a couple blocks away from me may not get me or think that what I'm thinking about is the priority, but there are other people who do. And I think that is really important. You've helped remind me very much of how important that is. So does anyone else want to share about the future of feminist publishing before we go on to some of these amazing questions from our guests?
Something to add to what Michelle was saying. I echo everything that she's saying, and I do believe that you guys are doing the work. In feminist publishing in general, I believe that also the weird people and like all the underrepresented voices that are being published, those are the people who should also be making the decisions. And so I'm just thinking about the other end of like, not only are those voices to be, put into book and for all of our stories, but however weird, however experimental, however, like liminal they are, to be able to put them, but also for us to be the ones also in positions of power. And so to me, the future would also mean that we will have more trans people in positions of power at like big houses, more Black people in positions of power, like, more immigrants in positions of power. And so that's what that means. It's like, who's your board, who's running your show, who's making the decisions, who are your editors, who's your marketing team, how are the people being marketed? Are they being marketed only because of their skin color? Are they being marketed because their book is amazing? Like, what's going on? And so I think that it's both the product itself, but also the line of the people who get it there and how that product has a life, right? What is the life of that book afterwards? And I go back to like my experience with you all, because I felt very seen as a person, like I've talked to both, like, I talked to Jisoo and Lauren a lot, and like, I feel seen. I feel like they're getting both, like, it's not only my book, like there's also a human being behind it. And there's a sense of connection with the other person. It's not just transactional. Like, my work also has like a spirit to it. And so like, this is bigger than just the product itself. And so I am definitely just thinking about, the back end of the administrative side of it. It's like, who are all the people who are making the decisions? And that's going to reshape the culture, and that's going to reshape who gets, everything else. And so that's one thing that I was thinking about.
Yes, and I love that you're talking about that at all levels. I think about that often. We were talking about Florence earlier, but how she really talked about feminist press as a springboard to kind of make sure that publishing was feminist at all different levels. She thought that after feminist press had been around for about 10 years, that the rest of the industry would get it, because they'd realize that the world was diverse and that we needed more books that would represent the fullness of who we are, right? And yet we're still trucking today because we still need to move forward, even though a lot of progress has happened. And so I love that you were saying that, because that was very much a part of the founding and something we take really seriously. Also, even within all levels of feminist press, in terms of feminist typography, when we can, thinking about who's designing our books, who's designing our website, who's designing the avatars of our staff, i.e. Bishakh on our website. All of those things, those are part of the story, and who's producing our books and who's printing our books. All those things really matter. And so that has been really important to feminist press's story as well. And I wanted to see if Camille or Bishakh have any thoughts about the future of feminist publishing before we go on to our next question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I can offer a prediction, but I am hopeful, especially in November 2020. Not just because, things are looking up for the country in general, but because of things that happened during 2020, and not just as a reaction, but to, 4 years of horror, but as organic kind of movements like, Black Lives Matter, and how Black Lives Matter as an intersectional movement also, that the Black Trans Lives Matter gathering in, I think, June or July. I mean, the amount of people that showed up to that is a testimony to how powerful intersectionality can be, right? So I think that seed of that kind of movement in history is so strong right now, despite all of the roadblocks and obstacles that are laid in our way, that I think in the mainstream, if there is such a thing, there is a hunger for voices that can be amplified by feminist publishing houses and intersectional feminist publishing houses. And I'll speak only for comics just for the moment, but I think, the voices that are brought to the fore by this openness and kind of very rich, diverse mix of people who are participating in this conversation, that kind of openness brings with it new modes and new ways of storytelling. And I think people want that too. So I'm pretty optimistic that this will be there's a movement that is taking place in the world at large that will help propel publishing like this forward, because it's all part of a bigger wave towards justice and towards being on the right side of history and humanity.
Yeah, cheers to that, being on the right side of history. I think a lot about how the books of this time will tell future generations who we are, or who we were. Exactly. And that's so important, that I feel good about future generations seeing your books as a way of talking about who we are and what we were thinking about and wanting to disrupt and also build and heal. That's very important. So how about you, Camille?
I mean, I think to echo what all of my other wonderful panelists have said, of feeling seen in the experience at Feminist Press, and that this model is certainly the model that should, be in larger publishers, other indie publishers too, because I've heard terrible stories from writer friends of their experiences that they've had. And I think that is also, of what comes next in terms of what does it mean for something to be published, so that there's multimodal ideas that you all are working on, I think is amazing. And I think too, what's the evolution of all of these systems? So who's working in places, whose manuscript gets seen, what do rights even mean? What's ownership? Like, I think all of those things, what's the feminist version of that look like, and how can that not just be present in beautiful places like Feminist Press, but in the industry at large, I think is definitely where I hope things are going.
I hope so too. But I have a lot of faith. Perpetual optimist here, admittedly, but I have a lot of faith in where we can go together. So we have a couple of questions for us. I can't believe we've been just going through that. We're getting close to our night even being over soon, but I have some time for a couple of other questions. And I have one question from an anonymous attendee asking, what new projects are folks currently working on? If anyone would like to share some things that are emerging.
I'm sitting here in a closet in my son's room because I'm working on a podcast, and this is the quietest spot in my house, and it's been turned into a podcast studio, I guess. So I'm working on a podcast called Your Magic, and it's about witchery and mysticism. It's going to premiere on Spotify in February. Today, I just spent the afternoon talking to Rachel True, who you guys might know as Rochelle from The Craft. So it was a real banner day for me. And we have amazing, producers and interns who are all like, creating content for it also. So it's going to be really fun.
I can't wait. There's some craft fans on the FP staff, so I know that there's going to be a lot of joy and listening parties.
Yeah. And we've interviewed a bunch of writers too, like Roxane Gay is on it, and Saeed Jones, and Morgan Parker, and Alexander Chee. So it's going to be very literary. And then also like Brittany Howard from Alabama Shakes is on it. And it's wild. It's been very fun. And I get to read all their tarot cards. So.
Oh, so amazing. Oh my gosh. I can't wait to tune in. Yes. Does anyone else have any burning new projects?
I'm working on a comic right now. I don't think it's a secret. It's going to be published. I hope it's not a secret. Eflux, as part of a special trans femme aesthetics issue. So I'm spending all day inking and drawing here. So,
oh, cool! Sneak peek, amazing.
Beautiful forest scene that I painted earlier. I have some ideas for a longer project, but I think 2020 is just not the headspace that I find it's not a conducive headspace to work on that. But I'm happy to be working on a longish story, so watch out for that at Eflux.
I can share also. I'm working on a novel. Right now it's loosely called Papi, and it's set in Colombia, and it's also in Spanglish, and it has a lot of queer history on it. That's why I keep mentioning history, because I love history. So I'm working on that, and then I'm also going to be recording the audiobook for Fiebre starting next week. I'm going to Audible because they finally opened the offices. So if you want to listen to me read the entire book, which you should, it's going to be available sometime next year. So I'm going to be doing a lot of talking next week.
Oh, can't wait to hear it, and really excited about it too. How about you, Camille?
I have been at work on a novel for a little while now, but I don't know, the muses this summer came to me and were like, or maybe short stories. So I've been working on some new short stories the last few months too.
Can't wait. Can't wait for all of your projects. Oh my gosh, keep us posted about whatever tea you're willing to spill so we can thirstily await your next creations. But I am really excited, and I love that you're creating too. This is a really hard time that we're in. And so I'm also really healed by the art that's being created in this moment. I think in 2022, I just have a sense that there's going to be a lot of gems out in the world in 2021 created of this moment. And I can't wait to see what we learn from each of you as well. So Michelle, I just got this question that I feel like it's fun, and it relates to your podcast. From Amy Medeiros is asking, Michelle, if you were to draw a tarot card for Feminist Press at 50, what would it be?
I just did. And
oh my gosh.
It's the Queen of Swords, which is so good because swords rules writing, communication. And look at this queen. This is like a feminist queen of all the queens. She's like up on her cloud in the sky, which gives you perspective, right? It's about having the big, being able to see the big picture, having visionary perspective, and being able to see like what doesn't belong, what needs to go. She's got her sword drawn. She's holding a man's head in her hand. She might have cut it off. There's another read on it that it's a mask. And in that sense, she is a queen who is all about increasing authenticity all the time, taking away masks, getting more and more authentic. And, making those cuts that she's making are around artifice and things that just don't matter anymore, that keep us apart from ourselves. So I like that for you guys.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And, Feminist Press team is saying, okay, new Feminist Press tote bag idea. So I love it. Queen of Swords. I'm going to go look at my deck tonight and see it, because I think it's amazing. And, I love that question was asked, because I think it's just it's beautiful to think about. And the imagination, right? Thinking about magic, mystery, imagination, vision, possibility. It took visionary thoughts and intentions for Florence and people who helped her build Feminist Press to bring this into the world and to midwife this press. And it's amazing to see, through the resilience of many challenges over the years and many triumphs, that we're still here. So I hate that we're getting close to the end of our time together, because I could talk to you all for hours and hours. And I definitely think, in the feminist future post-COVID chaos, there needs to be some kind of gathering of some sort for us all to celebrate with a dance party and tarot. But
dance party.
Right. And I will cook. But I was going to ask you one last thing. If each of you could maybe say the book that you are most intrigued by, new or past and Feminist Press, that you would like to read. And if you want to think about that, I'm just curious, because it always gives me ideas too when people who I like talk about the books that intrigue them. And then I think, oh, I'm going to go dive into that book. And so for me, I was just thinking about a bunch of Feminist Press books recently that I wanted to go back and explore. And I am going to go back and explore Spit and Passion, because I introduced it to my students a few years ago. But now, after hearing you talk about it, I'm thinking, oh, I need to read this book with new eyes. So that's the one that I'm going to take into my holiday reading.
I want to reread Daddy Was a Numbers Runner. I'm reading, one of the segments I'm doing for this podcast is about lucky number dream books, because my grandmother had one and you use them to play the numbers on. And in my research, I found this other book called Sex Workers, Psychics, and Numbers Runners. And it's by LaShawn Harris. And it's not a Feminist Press book, but it's definitely, she's a serious comrade. It's about Black women in the informal economy in the 20s and 30s. And so I'm just reading about all these, about the whole idea of numbers running and and I'm like, oh, I know that book is somewhere on one of these shelves and I've got to go back and read it especially hearing about Louise Merriweather, and I got to donate to her fund and all of it. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm really intrigued to read Juli's book and to read Camille's book. I've been in a bit of a hole as far as like getting new books is concerned. I've just felt sort of like going back to what's on my shelves from ye olden times is what's getting me through 2020. But I think 2021 will be the year for opening myself back up to newer work. So I'm looking forward to that, and also to reading the Dorothy West book. So here's to the new year, so I can finally stop reading my really bad mystery novels.
I'm excited. I love a good mystery though too, so we should commiserate. How about you, Camille?
Well, actually, Bishakh, I want to read your book, so that's been on my list. And Juli mentioned my book earlier. I'd started reading yours and Michelle, so I'm all of my panelists, all these fellow panelists. I'm excited to dig into all the work.
Thank you so much.
I was gonna say Cockfight,
Oh, yeah.
because it's in translation and it takes place in Latin America, and I just wanted to see how she did that. And I was also thinking about the children's book, Michelle, that you wrote, because when we were doing Drag Queen Story Hour, I don't have children, and so I'm not really close to any children. I don't have any children around me, but this was a time where I started reading a lot of books, children books, and I think they're incredible, and they're really hard to write. It's like, for me, I don't know, just like you have to put so much in such little space, and like you're teaching something with like very like monosyllabic language, and so it's just, I feel like there's a lot of like, I feel like you can learn a lot. It's like poetry, you know, it's like you distill something into like such a short space. And I've been just like reading, like because I was involved with Drag Queen Story Hour, I would just pick up children's books now and just read them. And I read myself children's books because I think you should, because like, why wouldn't you read yourself a bedtime story in a children's book? So I'm thinking about more children's books, and definitely Michelle, and I'm just blanked on the name, sorry, but a Cockfight and children's books.
Yes, Tabitha and Magoo dress up too. And
that's right.
I feel like, I mean, the team, right? I know I can't see them, but I feel like there's been a million times where I'd run around the office with Tabitha and Magoo and say, can you believe this book is in drag? And then flip off the jacket over and over and over, that it never ceases to dazzle me. And so I think, you know, my inner child, I'm very much in touch with it, but I feel like if that still dazzles me at 40, you know, I just love reading it to the children in my life. And I have a new god baby who's going to be receiving a copy of it very soon. So I love it too. And I'm so glad that you brought that book into the conversation too. And I just want to thank you each for the magic you bring to FP. You know, now I have all sorts of ideas for you and with you, because, you know, you also, I think all of us being together, the creativity is infectious. I'm thinking, oh, Bishakh, a tarot card deck with your beautiful art would be super hot, and I would spend money for that.
I would happily draw the Queen of Swords, both drawing from the pack, but also drawing as a drawing. So keep me in mind for the tote bag.
You know, I was going to say, we need to talk, right? Because
yeah.
I mean, this from a woman, you can't see it, who I commissioned my own Black Empress tarot card that is next to my writing desk, because I see that as like my card in the tarot, right? But I needed to see the representation that looked like me. So we should definitely talk about that.
Let's do it.
But I wanted to just thank you all. I feel, you know, we were talking about ancestors today, and talking about 50 years and what it means for us to be a part of this 50-year conversation that will go on for many more years. And it's just an honor and a blessing to be able to work with people who have a vision for a world where we can all be free and liberated from all of those systems that oppress, and to build a beautiful future together where we can all be in a just world, where we can all recognize ourselves in a book, and where insurgent voices will be celebrated instead of silenced. So I just want everyone who's listening today to support these very powerful artists, and you are artists, support these authors, and support them by supporting their books, supporting their work, and also, if you have it, supporting the feminist press so we can continue to amplify the voices that need to be supported with special care that only the feminist press can give. And I am a product of what the feminist press can give as well, having had one of my first bylines in a couple of feminist anthologies at Feminist Press. And so I also just want to say, as someone who never thought I would be able to have my footing in publishing for all sorts of systemic reasons, that if the feminist press didn't exist, I wouldn't be able to realize many levels of my own potential. And I share that with many of our authors, and just want to say that we are grateful for you and grateful for the love and care and righteousness that helped start Feminist Press, and look forward to it going on, and hope that you all keep safe, stay well, wear a mask, and love each other.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this. Thank you for existing. Thank you for all the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Take good care, and when we can come out of the COVID, we will dance together.
Oh
and
my
until
God.
then,
Let's meet up.
Please.
Where are we going
Yes,
to
meet
do?
up.
Feminist
Yes.
party. Yes.
Until
Can't
then, we
wait.
will see each other on the interwebs.
Okay.
Yes, and through the page.
Okay.
Lots of love.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.